Welcome to the AgriPod, brought to you by Herdwatch, the #1 farm management app used on over 21,000 farms. Join me, Katie Shanahan, as we bring together top experts in agriculture, influencers and more each month. Uncover invaluable tips and tricks to navigate the agricultural calendar successfully. Engage in insightful discussions and current agricultural issues, all whilst having some fun along the way. Transform your farming journey by downloading the Herdwatch app today and say goodbye to farm paperwork.
I'm nervous. Come on, let's go.
And welcome back to episode 3 of the AgriPod by Herdwatch. Amie, just coming back to you, I don't know about you, but I know certainly for me, there is such a large proportion of my friends that have immigrated, a lot of them, gone off to Australia, New Zealand, Dubai. Is this something you're seeing yourself, and were you ever tempted?
Yeah, I know my own brother's actually gone out since September and he's loving life. I'm very jealous of him walking along the beach and the sun on his back. But there's a huge amount of, I think, our generation gone now. And look, I think it's a great thing. You need to travel, you need to see that while you can. I went to New Zealand for 4 months during college on placement. So I worked on a dairy farm. I always planned on going back and doing another year, but I just went on, started work, and I never got back around to it. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. If you have that travel bug and you're mad to go, I think you may as well go. And even in the ag industry, there's so much you can learn from farms abroad. Now, look, you can learn a lot from farms here in Ireland too. There's really good setups, but it's just a different thing that you mightn't get to do later on in life. So it's great, I suppose, to travel while you're younger and go see that. There's a lot to learn from those different setups that you can bring back to the home farm or to a farm you plan on working on. But yeah, there's a lot of young people. I think back to the point of getting young people into farming, like it's a tough lifestyle. There's no point in saying otherwise, but I think the rewards are massive, and the people that are in it, they have that love for it and they know what's there. But the other side of things, I think it needs to be profitable. You'll do the graft for so long and you'll put everything into it when you're young just to make it easier maybe down the line. But at a certain stage, it does need to be profitable. And I think there's lots of different factors affecting that. Like even on that calf to beef thing, it's working with the dairy farmer to make sure that the calves are of good genetics, because the amount of the figures around farmers that start rearing calves and then stop after 5 years is scary. Because of that, they're buying poor quality or even poor health calves and they're not leaving a profit. So I think it's important that all of us work together, the dairy farmer, the beef farmer, the tillage farmer, and create that unity so that if a young farmer decides to go out and maybe start, suckling or start rearing calves, which is often the way a young person will start, because it's an easy way of getting in, not an easy, but it's a cheaper way of getting into stock. I think they need to be buying the best calves they can buy. They need to have support there. And I suppose, is there a way we can support them in infrastructure? Is there more grants available maybe for that younger person? How do we get them up and running from a young age that they make a few pounds from it and still enjoy it at the same time, be it full-time or part-time?
I think as well, like some of the things you mentioned there, around speaking to the local dairy farmer about genetics and so on. Do you think a lot of this wanting to be profitable kind of comes off the back of maybe being a little bit more educated in terms of best practice on a farm? Or do you think that comes with, doing the bare minimum or just learning off your parents? Or do you think we need a little bit more in terms of just coming from a young farmer's perspective?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I suppose I learned a lot of the practicals from farming at home, but like there's so many good resources out there now, even like the likes of Chagas that you can go. There's so many Zoom calls on, you can pull from different things. And even like the amount of things I've learned from social media, YouTube, there's some great farmers on YouTube now that show different things that they're doing. You pick up all that, but yeah, I think I suppose we would have done a bit on college on profitability and that side of things, but I think you can learn a lot from even being part of discussion groups, logging on to Chagas webinars. even dealing with the likes of your sales reps or any of those people, and they'll have different tools and ways and maybe help you link up with certain farmers for different products. But yeah, like profitability is something I suppose that needs to be at the forefront, but often it can take a couple of years to get to that stage because you're putting every penny you make, you're putting it back into the farm again. So it can take a bit of time to get there.
And I think it's important to kind of look at, like, when we talk to other countries, having institutions like Teagasc and ICBF, we are the envy of other countries. That research isn't private research. It isn't privately owned. It's owned by all of us. We all get the benefit of it. And when we look at dairy beef in particular, like, it's the one policy I actually think that has really moved on massively since the first initial scare with the animal welfare videos in 2019. We've got commercial beef values now readily available for Amie to use if she wants to. Farmers have the dairy beef index that they can pick bulls off of. You know, there's a lot more honesty brought into the breeds, and you know, production is key. And now the dairy farmers have quickly realised that, you know, they need to put time and effort into their bull selection for the beef farmer. So I think that's only going to accelerate in the next 3 years. It's the sex semen tied with the DBI time, then with the resulting in a better CBV, is going to help Amy's position in terms of profitability. So it's brilliant. But as Amy said, the infrastructure, we need support there, and we also need support, initial upfront support. Like every other livestock system gets supported, dairy beef gets very minimal support.
And just like I have a point there, and it's a further step back now. You've got into the conversation of profitability, but in terms of the conversation of getting the next generation involved in farming, getting them involved in farming probably feeds into Norma's lap more than anything. We often have this conversation at home. My husband is extremely farm safety aware. I mean, extremely, and it's brilliant and all of that. We have 4 daughters, and I always say I'd love to see one of them go farming. If that's what they want to do, it would be brilliant. It's there for them if they want it. And we always have this argument about, should they be on the farm? Should they not be on the farm? Is it a safe place? Isn't it a safe place? Where are they safe? Where are they not safe? And I've had many conversations with the fabulous Alma Jordan about this, who does an amazing job with AgriKids, and we often have this conversation. And one thing she said to me, you always make sure you can see them so that they're within sight. And I'd just be interested to hear Norma's view on this.
Yes, so that is quite a hot topic of conversation between farmers, and it goes back a lot to what you're all saying there. At the end of the day, farming is not a job to farmers, it is a way of life, and you grow up with a love of farming that has been instilled, you know. Amy explained it greatly there, by her mum and, you know, and grandparents before you, going down with granddad or whatever it is. That's how people put up with the tough part of farming, you know, the bad weather days, the tough price, you know, because it's cyclic, and you know it'll come around, and because you've learned that from a very young age. But when it comes to farm safety, now, hands up, I'm not a farm safety expert, but what we do in our own farm, we've got 3 young kids from the age of 12 down, is they never go on the farmyard without telling an adult they're going down the yard. We have neighbours' kids that come here who are used to going down the farmyard as they please. But as I say, you're in this house, you don't go on our farmyard unless the adults that are down there know you're coming down. So from a very young age, from a toddler age, we have trained the kids basically pick up the phone, ring daddy down the yard and say, can I come down? You know, and he'll have the time for them. He knows they're coming down then. And I do agree, it is the only way that you will develop that love of farming is if you are involved in it from a very, very young age, and rearing those calves, those sucklers, whatever it is. But there's an appropriate way to do it, and all of the health and safety experts out there, they have their reasons for telling you why it's not safe, or have kids on a tractor at a certain age, all those things. They're not saying it to annoy you, or, you know, they're saying it for a good reason, and they've seen it, they've done the research on it, and they understand it. And you'll have a lot of kickback saying, well, when I was a young fella, when I was young, I did this and I did that. Things are different now. Machinery is different. Animals are different. And it's not like what it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that's just my thing around health and safety, is they're telling you for a good reason. They're not saying it to annoy you. Yeah.
I think for farmers, especially in Ireland, a lot of us are either family farms or born into farming or farming background, or someone knows the farmer. And I think that leads to this kind of blasé when it comes to farm safety. Maybe it's not taken as seriously when you're born into it. You're around the yard when you're a toddler. Our parents, mightn't take it as seriously. But it's definitely something that, like you said, it's forever changing. The machinery is bigger. A lot more hazards on a farmyard now than there was maybe 20 years ago. So it's definitely something to bear in mind and worth the conversation around. So one thing that I can't not talk about on the podcast, unfortunately, is something that's been very, very big in the last, I suppose, 12 months, especially. Anya, I think I'm going to come to you on this one. So the nitrates, the whole issue around nitrates and derogation, it's a massive issue for, I suppose, more so the dairy farmers. They've seen a decrease from 250 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare to 220. And that's until the next review. So just maybe a little discussion around that, Anya. What's the IFA actively doing for farmers? And I suppose, what can farmers do between now and that next review, in a bid to like, is the attitude around maintaining, or what is the stance of the IFA in terms of this?
So that's an honours levels maths question now, Katie. So no, look, it is highly complex. So the nitrates is governed by the Water Frameworks Directive. So that's the parent legislation from the EU. And why we're seeing all this like rapid measures focused on water quality in the last few years is because EU-wide we've a target to reach all water bodies should have a good status by 2027, and 2027 obviously is only 3 years away. So that's creating urgency in policy, and what we're seeing because of that, then through the Nitrates Action Programme, which governs agricultural pressures on water quality, we are seeing a lot of new measures. So soil testing on more farms, buffer strips, road cambraing, all that. We're seeing that, and that'll kick off. We will start a mammoth journey next year of developing our 6th nitrates action plan, and that'll go through 3 phases of consultation again. And we're still not even finished the interim review of the 5th nitrates action plan. So that was announced, the proposals were announced 2 days ago, and that won't conclude until June of this year. So we are seeing the frequency of consultations and reviews getting faster and faster, and that's as I said before, breeding uncertainty. The 220 came in under the Derogation Commission decision, so it was announced without any consultation with stakeholders in April of 2022. So we were not familiar with it. And the biggest issue is not the fact that, it's not the text of 250, 220, it's the way in which the water quality was assessed is the biggest issue that we have. So they basically judged the performance of catchments based on metrics that stocking rate had actually very little influence on. And that to me is where the issue lies, and it's a dangerous precedence that we find ourselves in. We were expected to change the eutrophication status of our estuaries within 2 years by just adjusting the stocking rate down, or by that the adjustment in stocking rate. The stocking rate was the only thing that affected our estuaries, the eutrophication status, and that's just not true. It was interpreted, the legislation around it, which is Article 12 of the Commission decision, it was interpreted very severely, and I think very unfairly, because the ask was greater than what the impact is. So going forward, what we have to do is we have to make sure that should Article 12 remain in any other Commission decision, that it is interpreted more fairly, so that the changes are, the trends are broader, they're over a longer period. They look at sub-catchment level to reflect, local efforts, because water quality is all about local effort. So that is what we'll be focusing on. With regards to the interim review, there has been a little bit of flexibility offered to farmers who are under pressure to go from 250 down to 220, and that's due to the allowances made for reductions in crude protein. So if you feed a lower crude protein nut to your cows, you can achieve a lower nitrogen excretion rate on those cows, which effectively lowers your stocking rate. And the same goes for the excretion rate of calves. So that has been lowered to reflect reality. A 1 month old calf excretes very little nitrogen compared to an 11-month-old calf or yearling. So it's to reflect that. So those two allowances will help farmers. In the meantime, what we need to do is we need to, as an association, we need to reach out to the EPA and ask the EPA to be more holistic in their reporting of water quality. Provide statistical scrutiny. Where's the real points of difference between adjacent years? Look at catchments, not only at catchment level, at whole catchment level, but sub-catchment level, and inform the farmers of their local water quality. So what is the water quality in my river? Because once we know it, we can take ownership of it. And then what we also need to do is we need to improve compliance. If we can get water quality stable with marginal improvements, it puts us in a better position for negotiating the derogation next year for 2026 to 2029. It doesn't just affect dairy farmers though, and that's what we're seeing. It is affecting all farmers because it's increasing land rent across all sectors, the land rental prices, and particularly with tillage, it's an additional competition for land. And in an era where we're looking for land for forestry, we're looking for land for AD, we're looking for land for tillage. We only have so much land, and by bringing this in, we have distorted the availability of land for other enterprises. And the worst thing of all is, and the hardest thing to stomach, is that it'll do very little for water quality. And that if it did improve water quality, we'd somewhat stomach it, but it won't. With regards to what we've done, Katie, we spent, the Dairy Committee and the wider IFA Association, we literally toured the country talking to TDs on farms. Every county executive had TDs on their farm. We met the minister on 3 different farms in 3 different counties. We met the Taoiseach. We protested at the think tanks of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. We got the commissioner over. We went over to see the commissioner twice in the EU, a delegation of us. We did a 19-page submission as to why it wasn't appropriate, voluntary submission to the Commission. We pretty much did everything other than go to Ursula von der Leyen. And that's how seriously it was taken and the mammoth effort that was done. And to be faced then with the fact that the Commissioner came over for an 8-hour visit and didn't even go outside the M50 was just a sucker punch, because we had done everything to try get him to come over to understand. They don't, in the continental Europe, they can, if they lose the derogation, it's not a big deal because it's an extra cost on the production system, but it doesn't put their whole business into jeopardy, because they collect slurry 12 months of the year, so they can export 12 months of slurry. We only collect slurry for 3 months of the year. So we only have a quarter of that slurry to export, and we don't have an AD, and we're not going to be able to ship slurry off the island. So our unique position is what we need to try educate them on as well, like why we're so different. And if they want to increase pasture-based agriculture, which is a goal of the farm to fork strategy, they need to realise that the derogation goes hand in glove with that. But I hope that answers your question.
It definitely does, and more. I suppose we could talk for ages on nitrates, but just kind of going on from that, Aileen, I just want to get your opinion on, we've spoken a lot about, farming families, financial security for these farming families, who are probably going to become less profitable, with a reduction in the amount of cows they're able to have. Will this affect the image that we have of Ireland? When you think of farming in Ireland, you're thinking of a family farm. Do you think this will affect the image of farming in Ireland in the future?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. A reduction in farming, when you look at the bigger scale of things, again, it comes back to that perception piece. At the moment, there is a perception that we are industrial farmers. If you've 150 cows, you're industrial farming. We are nothing on the scale of industrial farming compared to other countries. We're very much a farming family. And, if you talk about farms getting bigger, how much bigger realistically are they going to? So we're never going to get to that scale. Well, I believe we're not. But I think what we do need to do is we do need to protect defining what we actually are and what our farming system is. And it's all of the good stuff that Anya has spoken about. And I think it's all there in terms of what we are and what we're doing and striving to be more sustainable. Excuse me, but it's again communicating that to the end user. And there's a lot of that doesn't need to be communicated to the end user. They just need to, I suppose, to give credit. Like I always say, I think the NDC do a phenomenal job with how they communicate farming, and I think they are reality. I think it's not a glossed up version. I think it is reality of what farming looks. Well, I'm talking from dairy farm point of view of what dairy farming looks like in Ireland.
And Katie, just on that, this is another one of those indirect consequences. So if we get rid of the derogation, the critics will think it'll stop large scale farming. It won't. The 400, 500 cow farmer can easily navigate this. It's the 70 cow farmer in West Cork, surrounded by all his neighbours at 70 and 90 cows, that you're scrutinising here. And if you have to cut back in cow numbers but maintain output to try and maintain a living, you're going towards a more high input system. So we're actually, by taking away the derogation, you're actually moving the sector towards, indoor systems, high yielding, high output, not moving away from our competitive advantage, but also our climatic advantage, which is grass. So it's again, what one wants and what the objectives will achieve don't line up. So that's probably the most frustrating part as to how it could impact the wider industry and the reputation of our industry.
Perfect. I'm just going to pause here a second. Norma, are you okay? I'm just conscious of the time. I didn't check the time there.
No, we'll keep going.
Are you sure? Now you can pop off if you want.
Yeah, no.
The last topic is women in ag, and that's it then.
Yeah, work it. No, keep going.
Okay, brilliant. Right, so I suppose we can't finish the podcast without talking about being a woman in agriculture, whether it being a farmer working in the agri sector. I want to be extremely positive about it. Just from speaking to you all individually prior to this podcast, I'm aware that you speak a lot about opportunities. You speak a lot about either being actively farming, maybe not seeing the issues as much, perhaps. I know for myself, similar to you, Amie. Like my mother is the herd owner in our farm, even though I have 3 brothers and a father. I was very much thrown into it from a very young age. I was never treated any differently. Everyone knows me in the mart and the local co-op. So I'm very, very lucky to say that I never saw so much of an issue on farm level. I suppose the issues for me came around, the the options to branch out in terms of education. Now I did love what I went into, but I suppose at the time there wasn't. Now, like I did a talk in UCD a few weeks ago to students, just talking about Herdwatch, talking about marketing, how you can work for an agri company like this. And I was amazed to see all the different types of courses available nowadays in the agri sector. Like, back, and I hate saying that, like, I'm not old at all, but even 10 years ago when I was doing the Leaving Cert, it wasn't this thing of, going down and doing so many different routes in ag. It was literally, you just did ag science and that was it. You did agriculture, ag science, or did the green cert. That's all people were talking about. There was none of this, all these crop production, all these, the vast amount of courses, the vast amount of master's opportunities that are there. So maybe just Amie, coming to you first, you said there you did go to UCD. Was that something you knew you wanted to do in terms of not farming full time, or how did you approach it?
So I think it probably started in TY when I did my work placement. So I spent a week with a vet and a week in a primary school. And I think the vet ag side of things just stuck with me a little bit stronger. Now, I would have grew up on a farm as well, so I would have been always out and about. But originally I actually wanted to be a vet, but I didn't do chemistry and I wasn't that strong that way. So ag science was probably the next best thing. So yeah, went to UCD, planned on doing like nutrition, animal nutrition, that side of things. I'm not a million miles away from that now, but yeah, and like even I suppose, yeah, like I think it's not that long ago, but every year now it's getting that little bit longer since I was in college. But there was a very good mix of say male versus female in our year. We had I can't remember the exact numbers now, but I remember it wasn't a million miles off each other. So I always had a nice gang of girls in college. We still meet up to this day. Like, so, I never paid much heed to it then. I wanted to go into the ag industry, but I don't think I really knew the vastness of it until I came out the other end and seeing at our careers fair in fourth year, just the amount of job opportunities that there was. I think maybe I was at the very beginning of that ag industry being a really good place to be at that time. So you could you could go into like further education, you could go on and do your master's, do a PhD, or you could go out into the world and do there was so many co-ops, meat processors, there was Chagas, there was ICBF, there was just so many people looking for employees back then, and there was so much to choose from. So, and I think it's still the same now. I think there's so many jobs out there in the ag industry that there's kind of something for everyone. So it's a good place to be, I think.
Aileen, especially you speaking to you yesterday, you spoke a lot about opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll openly admit, by comparison, I am from the dinosaur era. So when I was leaving school, and I ultimately actually wanted to join the army to ride for the army and be a cadet, that was actually what I tried, and it didn't work out. The only other thing I knew was agriculture, and I would have been at that point where people thought, like, studying agriculture, like, you're a girl, why? Like, it wasn't really the norm. Well, there were others doing it. It just wasn't. It wasn't as popular as it is now. So studying agribusiness then took me down the road of marketing, and I just think it's incredible the opportunities that are there in agriculture now, and that's outside of farming. That's across the board, be it accountancy roles, tech roles. There's just a vast array, and I think it's so exciting. And I think, like I said to you previously, Katie, what I love about it is one big community. If you work in agriculture, it's just lovely. We always cross paths, and that's just the industry in which we're in. It's a lovely industry with loads of opportunities, I believe.
And Anya, would you have anything to comment on? You have a unique journey as well, and even the role you're in at the moment. You're muted there again. Sorry, Anya.
sorry, now, I suppose, look, we didn't have the opportunity to go to Dublin. We couldn't afford to go to Dublin for college. That was the stark reality. So we went to Limerick because it was the nearest college. But I'd worked in a vet practice for 7 years on a Saturday. I was a Saturday girl, and it was life-changing, because like that, I thought I wanted to be a vet, but then I realised I actually prefer talking to the farmers. So I was chatting to the farmers at the desk for ages. So that was really my, like, along with work, you know, being reared on a dairy farm, I loved just being in that kind of community. So when I did do science teaching, I always had it in the back of my head I wanted to do ag. And if there was a farm advisory course near me, I would have probably done that. But so I think even though I took a path that wasn't, you know, the typical path, I still got to where I was. And I think that you know, nobody should be discouraged from changing careers if you can. You know, like, there's plenty of opportunity there. Our skill set as farmers, we are very resilient and we're very adaptable. So, you know, we should use that to our core strength. My sister works in a large accountancy firm in Munster, and her boss, who's not from the country at all, he has said that he loves hiring country people and rural people, because they just put the shoulder to the wheel. Do you know, we just get on with it. We don't, we just go there. And I think the worst thing is women in agriculture, or women in general, it's nothing even to do with agriculture, is we can sometimes pigeonhole ourselves, or, you know, not say, you know, confine ourselves to a rigid skill set and not realise what we're actually capable of. So I think, you know, our skill set in the ag sector is easily transferable, massively desirable, and, you know, run with the opportunities that are there. You know, you'll never get this time back again. That's the one thing. Your late 20s, early 30s, you'll never get that time back again to progress your career. So just go for it.
Norma, just coming to you lastly on this kind of the topic. You said yourself there, you know, a lot of the people that are coming to you are wives, you know, that have lost farmers in accidents, sudden death. And I'm just wondering how, I know it's hard to put this into words, but I suppose as a whole, you know, these women that are coming, you know, are they finding it difficult to cope in terms of managing, you know, they're now in charge of the farm per se, or, you know, I suppose the services that they're coming to seek out from ye, they benefit from those obviously, but I can imagine it's a very difficult time for, you know, maybe not every woman is as active on the farm. I suppose they're the ones maybe that might suffer a little bit more.
Yeah, to tell you the story of one widow that came to us. She was not from a farming background. She married into a farm, and her husband died suddenly. Within a couple of years, she was farming. She rang one day, and she was in the middle of trying to figure out her husband had bred bulls. But anyway, she had deciphered with all of her own research that the type of bulls he was breeding, no, she wasn't for them. She had done so much research. She was going breeding her own bulls, and had started on that journey. Another time she rang, she was out fencing. You know, then we have other widows again. Like that, not from a farming background, and now find themselves, you know, trying to figure out how to run it, and are baffled by the level of information you need to know. I mean, you know, if you listen back over to what's been spoken about here, there's a wealth of knowledge needed to be a farmer today, or to be in any way connected to farming. And it's not just about going out and tending to an animal or a crop. There's so much more to it. And to try and bring yourself up to speed in that in a very short time frame can be overwhelming and difficult, especially when you've lots of different nuggets of advice, or, you know, go this way, do that, do the other. And it can be very overwhelming for some women, and then, you know, trying to make those decisions about possibly continuing to farm or sell, and that's where they run into further issues then with extended family, things like that. But I can't give you one definite answer on that because everybody's circumstances are different, and what they're going to do and how they're going to react to the awful thing that has happened on their farm will depend on them and their own resilience and adaptability, which is very much to the fore, as you've just spoken there about the farming community. I've seen that myself in the 12 years that I have been working in Embrace Farm, is that get up and go and just try to make the best of what you're dealt with, no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's a nitrates directive or something bad happening on your farm or another deadline to be met or there's a storm coming in, whatever it is. Farmers get on, get up and face it head on. I just want to touch a little bit on mental health because there's one thing I see and notice in the 12 years that we've been at this is it's all about the product that's being produced. The farmer themselves is very rarely spoken about at the same level. I was involved in that consultation for the next CAP around the theme of mental health recently, and I was absolutely astonished to be told by an official in DG Agri tell me that the mental health of farmers was never even considered in any shape or form of any CAP until COVID times. I thought that was quite startling. Another thing I find very startling is that any organisation, any official here in Ireland or in Europe could tell you at this point in time how many cattle are slaughtered across Europe. They cannot tell you how many farmers die, either by suicide or in farm accidents. We talk about farm accidents first. Each country counts up those figures differently, so nobody knows the true figure of how many farmers are dying in farm accidents in any given year across Europe. When it comes to suicide, our own national CSO, for example, they don't keep an accurate record of how many farmers die by suicide. There is a lot of work being done on that, and I think, to be honest, the appointing of a junior minister in the area of mental health and well-being within this past government has opened up that conversation. Like when I started 12 years ago, there was nobody talking about the mental health of farmers or what was going on with them. It was all about the product. But now the conversations are happening, but we still don't know how big of a scale of a problem it is. We'll all know, sitting here, we'll all know the anecdotal stories of farmers in our own locality either dying in farm accidents or dying by suicide due to all of these pressures and stresses that has been spoken about in the last hour. But nobody knows the true figure of what that looks like. And if you don't know the true figure of something, you can't deal with it, you can't put solutions to it, you can't work with it. That's just something I wanted to mention because there is a wealth of knowledge out there. And it's all about the product and the crop and the animal, but the farmer needs to be up there with that, and one needs to go hand in hand with the other. Yeah.
As well, though, farmers are guilty of that. We'll push everything else ahead.
Yeah. That's the resilience and the adaptability of farming. You know, it's the get on, the get up, the keep going. But there's no animal and there's no crop without the farmer, so they have to go hand in hand.
Very, very important, and thanks for bringing that up. I just want to share a little, going back to say that the Women in Ag, and I hate talking about challenges because I'm extremely stubborn, and if I want to do something, I'll do it. And I don't like telling people I have any challenges, in whatever pathway I like to do. But at a discussion group recently, just in a MACRA discussion group that we were having, I would think I was maybe one of 2 or 3 girls at it. And I'd say, just to, bring in the conversation again, one of the last questions was, how can we help women in ag or promote women in ag? And I was kind of shocked to see the question, but we were all broken up into groups anyway. And, when it came to, right, who wants to start off? Just like every male in the room just turned around and looked at me. And I was kind of like, well, the first thing we can do is ye all start talking, not me, because you're the ones that need to come up with some of the solutions. But I mean, the one thing I did say, I was immediately shot down by someone young in the group. I just brought up the discussion around, maternity leave for female farmers. And he instantly retaliated back by saying, oh, what about men? Men need paternity leave as well. And I just wanted to explain that, for me personally, if I was to get pregnant, coming up to lambing, I can't lamb any of my ewes. I can't handle them. it's dangerous for the baby. And I was here explaining this to young men aged between 17 and 30, and they were all looking at me like, what, is that real? And I was kind of like, yes lads, if I get hit in the stomach, things like this, the dangers around it. I think they were completely unaware. They were just thinking, oh, we want extra time off and to sit down and all this. If I could be now, like my mother used to be telling me, she was out lambing ewes back in the day and we all turned out fine, but I think it's the conversation around those important things that I like to push. Anya, how do you find that yourself? You're entering another exciting journey.
Yeah, I'm heavily pregnant, so I am going to have 2 under 2 in the end of the month, actually. So I've only less than 3 weeks to go. So look, I'm lucky. My employers, IFA, have been fabulous about it. Very understanding, very accommodating. I've never had any discrimination because I'm pregnant. It is frustrating that farming is a manual task. Before we had Sive, myself and my husband, we were managing a full-time farm on a part-time basis. That was the reality. We both had full-time jobs. We both were milking cows. So I was in the wellies every day. And what I was so stubborn about before I had Sive was that I'm not going to resort to the traditional roles, of motherhood. But I had no feckin' choice. I was the one producing the milk. I was the one with the uterus. I'd love to see the conversation if they had a uterus as to who was going to carry it. But that's probably kind of the frustrating part is whether you want to or not, you fall into the traditional roles because it's just you can't take an 8-week-old baby out to the farm and milk cows. You really there is danger. And I tried, and we milk recorded with her in front with her strapped into me. I really tried, but it is harder. So now when I go out to the farm, it's more, go out with Sive, show her the calves, all that. But I can't do what I want to do. And that's very frustrating because, you've a way of doing things. Amie, you'll know, from feeding calves, I want the buckets to be a certain level of clean. My husband has a different standard. Let's just leave it at that. Right. So it's just... It's very frustrating when you go out and you want to do things and you just can't. And so that is a big challenge of motherhood and juggling. But it's in every career. It's not just farming.
It's in every career. Like I'm in an office most of the time. I set the business up on my maternity leave on my second daughter. I didn't take maternity leave on my third daughter, and I eventually had got the business to a place on my fourth where I could take some time. And I do remember sitting home and tweeting a picture. I was sitting at the table looking out at this beautiful view and I went, now I know what people mean by maternity leave. This is amazing. It just took me to the fourth to do it. But I suppose that's the payoff when you're self-employed and be that farming. And I'm very of your mindset, Katie. If you tell me there's something I can't do, well, bloody hell, I'll do it. I'll prove the other way. But it is the unfortunate reality of, as you said, Anya, we're the women, we have the children, and unfortunately something does happen in our psyche after you have those child that you're kind of just drawn to them, and it's very difficult to get away from it. But I think farming, business, anything like that, that's kind of what you sign up for, isn't it?
I think we are going to stop there or we'd end up talking for the rest of the day. I'm conscious of the time. I want to thank you all, my four panelists today, Aine, Connell, Norma Rohan, Amie Coonan and Aileen Barron. It has been absolutely amazing. I loved the fact that everyone had an opinion on the topics we were talking about. It was nice to get the experiences from all your differing roles. Thanks very much. Happy International Women's Day to everybody listening, everybody out there. Make sure you tune in to next month's podcast. So do tune in for those. But until everybody, take care and thank you very much for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Herdwatch. Download the Herdwatch app today to eliminate farm paperwork and make better decisions with your farm in your hand. I hope you enjoyed this month's AgriPod by Herdwatch. Tune in next month where we will have another special guest in store. Bye!